regularly beaten during this ritual, but the teaching specifies that the beating isn't at the student, but of who else? The demon possessing them.
Sorry, it's just the only way we can hit the demon is by hitting you. So
I'm sorry, it's going to take a while, and they would just get fucking beat.
That's fucking crazy. So these people were like, yes, please hit me, hit the demon.
So you were there for 5 weeks consecutive, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Mondays, Fridays, Wednesdays, and Sundays, if you could manage it all. And then at the end of graduation, you have a half an hour exorcism that involved punching, beating, slapping the shit out of you.
Jesus.
It's wild. It's wild. Once the stage was passed, all the newly initiated would be subject to a screening exercise. So you weren't even guaranteed in right away. Trainees would then be expected to turn in all of their possessions over to the movement as donations to ensure that nothing was possessed by the number 666 and therefore possessed by the devil. So you donated everything, and they basically quote unquote combed through it looking for 666.
How do you fail this screening process?
Good question. I have no fucking idea.
They're like, you kept your yo-yo. You got to go.
I feel like it's less about, honestly, it's for the higher ups. I don't think it's about looking for 666. It's the final step to ensure that these people are all in. This is the last of what they got. They donate it to the movement for quote unquote, shit. And yeah, sure. The cult member still has free will to leave at any time, but now they have nothing. They have no place to go home to. All their possessions are donated. Whatever money they made got donated. And they just went through 1 month and 1 week of mind-numbingly torturous indoctrination.
Is that where the deaths started coming from? Is like people who didn't make it in, or what's the deal?
We'll talk about that when we get there. Because again, it's one of those things where we have just enough details to know what they were doing, but not enough to really know how it all went down. Once the higher ups received word from the heavens as to whether an item was possessed, that to answer your question prior, the item, if it was possessed, would be destroyed. In all cases, holy water would be sprinkled over all the donations to cleanse them, and things were rarely ever actually destroyed. So I'm sure they had a few, like, any good actor, improver, they had to get a couple that were quote unquote possessed to really sell it. But for the most part, all that shit was way too valuable. So they weren't going to destroy any of it. They needed to keep it. They were all donated. So now, boys, after all of that, you are officially now part of the movement for the restoration of the 10 Commandments. How you feeling? Feeling good? Feeling like you're ready to be saved by Jesus?
No, I'm not feeling good. This is
and Mary?
I'm probably secretly already like completely out on it at this point, I would guess. Except now I'm like fucking terrified and I have no possessions. So what the fuck am I going to do?
Fair. You know what? That's a fair point. So as the cult grew, they ended up having a total of 5 centers. I'm going to try and say the names, but I'll give you the location.
Centaurs?
Centers, like home base, a center.
Let's rewind back. Sorry, my bad.
No problem.
I heard you say that and I was like, where did they come from? When did they become part of the lore?
Centaurs, Jesse would leave. He would put his headphones down.
If you said they had centaurs, I'd be like, all right,
Pix.
I need to know what's going on over there.
Pix are get the fuck out.
They kept them in the labyrinth with the Minotaur and the Cyclops. Yeah.
They grew, as the cult grew over the years, they would end up with 5 centers, 5 places where people would either centaurs.
So they would they're like indoctrination centers, basically.
Indoctrination centers where they would worship, where they would pray, where they would gather and do group activities, where some people lived because remember they gave up their lands and stuff. Each one was varying size.
And they just put them back to work on their land or whatever for...
Yeah, we're going to get into the day-to-day after we talk about the centers. I'll just talk about the centers themselves. So the first was Igabiro Ria Maria, which was Mary's place of giving. And this was at Rugazi Bunyaruguru. I am so sorry. I am so white. The second one was Ishayiriro Ria Maria, which meant Mary's place of surrender and confession, and that was in Kanunga. Itakiro Ria Maria, which was Mary's place of rescue near Mituma. There was Imbumbrio Ria Maria, Mary's place of molding, Moulding. This was specifically Joseph Kibwerte's home. And then the fifth, but this one took a while and was one of the later ones, Igabiro Ria Maria became the main center. Or rather, this was later in their timeline. The very first one that we talked about, it became the main center for the whole cult as the years went on. Why it became the main center, we don't really know. Reasons are varied. The movement we know at the time of its changing was having financial distresses. The residence was a modern building with crops and fields, as well as a nearby tract of land, which was also valuable for people who getting all the people to live there. And this residence was also the home of Credonia, which may be the main reason that it became the main center. Now, the day-to-day life of a member of the movement of the restoration of the Ten Commandments was very rigid, we'll say. We'll start with their daily activities. One, Joseph Kibwerte received a vision explaining how the members of the movements should divide their days. So at this point, Joseph's bought in. It did not take him long after Credonia kind of joined him for him to be all in. And then soon he was